sure we're going to the right spot here. Okay. All right, we are talking about Thomas Gallaudet as an educational thinker. He's known kind of as the father and hero of American Sign Language, and he is who I chose to do my presentation on. Very briefly, just a little bit about him. So he was born in Philadelphia, but he spent most of his life and childhood in Connecticut, which is where most of this story takes place. So he graduated from Yale with his master's and his bachelor's degree in 1805, and then he went on to study theology at Andover, and he actually became a minister. So he had this Christian background, and he found that his interests were turning to help the less fortunate as a minister. And so he turned toward educating the deaf and dumb, even though that's not politically correct now. So the deaf and mute. So he meets Alice Cogwell, who was a child in his community who was deaf, and he was inspired to help her and found that she was capable of learning. She wasn't unintelligent, as most of society would have considered at the time, and so he started looking into ways to communicate and better help these children who were capable of learning but just needed better resources and a better way to be educated. So he studied the works of Abbé de l'Épée, who is considered the father of the deaf, and he actually founded a French institution which was kind of revolutionary in the sense that it taught the deaf visually rather than orally or by lip reading, which is what was most common in the United States at this time. And he, Gallaudet, decided to go to the school to see what he could learn and observe. And so he meets Jean Massot, who was a student of Abbé de l'Épée and was a current instructor at the French school, as well as Laurent Clerc, who was also a student and taught at the French school, and he became a good friend and colleague of Gallaudet. So he and Laurent Clerc came back to the United States and founded the first American school for the deaf, which was an elementary through high school at the time, and that was founded in 1817. And so he became a real advocate for the deaf community, and children from all across the country came to this school to learn, and they were taught an American Sign Language, not just by, lip reading. And so Gallaudet's work was influential in the sense that he also helped develop American Sign Language, which was translated and kind of adapted from French Sign Language. And later, his son, Edward Gallaudet, would sign a charter and send it to the President of the United States at the time, Abraham Lincoln. And this charter commissioned a national college to be founded just primarily for educating deaf students. And it later became Gallaudet University. And so anyone who is deaf or mute who wants to be educated now can, because of Thomas Gallaudet. And so with his philosophical standpoints, his theological standpoints, he actually gave a very powerful sermon at the opening of the institution, which I wanted to read a passage where he says, "Let us be grateful to God for the very superior advantages which we enjoy. Consider how imperfectly we improve them. Be mindful that after all we do, we are but unprofitable servants, and thus, feeling the necessity of our continual reliance upon Christ, trust alone to his righteousness for acceptance with God." So just kind of to sum up, I think, again, his theological background, his compassion for ministry, and his philanthropic and philosophical viewpoints of how to better educate the less fortunate helps drive him to do all that he did. He was really, the pioneer of deaf education, and deaf culture today kind of considers him their personal champion and ally. And so there's a lot we can learn and be grateful for because of him. And that is it. Thanks so much for listening.